For decades, consumer surveys have been the go-to tool for understanding shoppers. But here's the problem. Consumers don't always tell us the truth.
Instead of asking a few thousand people what they think, imagine listening to billions of unfiltered signals and being able to turn that into real-time insights about what customers are actually doing.
To help us rethink how retail really knows its customers, we've brought in two industry heavyweights who are helping reshape the consumer insights landscape.
I always ask this question, are you in a committed relationship? And if you say, yes, I am, I always ask you, did you administer a 5-point scale questionnaire to your partner before you got into a deep relationship? The answer is invariably no. So if big life decisions are being taken based on listening to your heart, how can I listen to your heart? That is the challenge.
And so really looking at the biggest data set possible and using AI and natural language processing techniques allows us to see the macro market, to dig into the micro markets and really provide actionable insights. Because the other thing is these things are changing so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You're listening to the Retail Razor Show, where your expert hosts and their guests cut through the clutter in retail and retail tech.
Welcome to Season 5, Episode 13 of the Retail Razor Show, the only retail podcast in the top 10 all-time indie management podcast charts on Good Pods, and the highest ranked retail podcast in the top 100 indie marketing podcast charts on Good Pods. I'm Ricardo Belmar.
And I'm Casey Golden. Welcome, Retail Razor fans, to retail's favorite podcast where we cut through the clutter to give you sharp insights on what's happening in retail today, tomorrow, and where we get real about what's driving the future of retail.
Today, we're tackling a question that every brand and retailer wrestles with. Do we really know our customers, or have we just been comforting ourselves with data that makes us feel smart? For decades, consumer surveys have been the go-to tool for understanding shoppers. But here's the problem. Consumers don't always tell us the truth. Not maliciously, just humanly. That gap between what people say and what they actually do has become a real blind spot that keeps leaders up at night.
And that's why we're calling this episode the Consumer Sentiment Gap, because the old survey-driven models are breaking down and the future of retail intelligence looks very different. Instead of asking a few thousand people what they think, imagine listening to billions of unfiltered signals, searches, social posts, ratings, reviews, and video content, and being able to turn that into real-time insights about what customers are actually doing, feeling, buying, or not buying. And yes, this means using AI to get the job done and bring real insights brands can use.
So to help us rethink how retail really knows its customers, we've brought in two industry heavyweights who are helping reshape the consumer insights landscape.
First, someone longtime fans of the show will remember as one of our original retail Avengers, Trevor Sumner, CEO of i-Genie AI. Trevor has spent nearly 15 years building and scaling cutting-edge technologies. He's led companies like Perch, Radiant, and Local Box, and now he's at i-Genie. He's revolutionizing customer insights by synthesizing tens of billions of data points for global leaders like Unilever, Coca-Cola, Bayer, and Clorox.
And joining him is Sthanunathan, Executive Chairman of i-Genie AI. Stan's a legend in the insights world. Honestly, he spent nearly 8 years as the EVP of Consumer and Market Insights at Unilever, and over 10 years at the Coca-Cola company, where he ended his tenure there as the Global VP of Insights. He literally is the OG of consumer insights. He's co-authored a Harvard Business Review paper on building an insights engine, written a book on AI for marketing and product innovation, and was honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award at TMRE.
And these days, he's channeling all that experience into i-Genie AI, helping businesses identify the next big thing with AI-powered insights. Together, Trevor and Stan are dismantling the old survey-driven approach and showing us what the next wave of retail intelligence looks like.
So today, we'll explore how AI is changing the game, what it means for brand leadership, and whether this is the end of market research as we know it, or just the end of pretending we knew what people wanted in the first place. But before we dive in, a really quick favor. If you're enjoying the show, and we hope you are, hit us with a 5-star rating and drop a short review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, or wherever you're listening.
And don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube so you never miss an episode.
Plus, check out the other shows in the Retail Razor Podcast Network: Retail Transformers, Blade to Greatness, and Data Plates.
You'll find them all in your favorite podcast app or together on our YouTube channel. So now let's dive into our conversation with Trevor and Stan and learn all about the consumer sentiment gap. It might just change the way you think about knowing your customer and your product.
Trevor, welcome back to the Retail Razor Show. It's been, like a hot minute since you've last been on here. And Stan, welcome to your first time on the show.
Thank you.
Trevor, it's been too long since we've had a fellow retail Avenger join us on the show. So glad to have you back and with a friend. So thanks for joining us today. This is a fun topic and I can't wait to get into it.
Great. It's good to be back. It's good to see you all and, all of the success with the Retail Razor podcast. Congrats.
Yeah, thanks. No, I'm absolutely positive our longtime fans probably know all about you, Trevor, but since it has been a while since you were on and since Stan's new to the show, in fact, Trevor, I think it was back in season 3, believe it or not, was the last time you were on the show with the Retail Avenger crew. So I'm sure there's been lots of things that have happened since then. So before we jump into today's topic, why don't you and Stan each give us a quick rundown on your backgrounds and what everyone should know about you?
Dan, do you want to start?
You go first.
All right. I'm a 25-year veteran of retail tech and marketing tech startups. Started my career in 1998, caused the first internet boom, building e-commerce sites and large scaling pricing configuration engines. Have done a variety of different startups and slowly went from employee 250 to 40 to 7 and started my first company in 2010, a company called LocalVox, which was doing local online marketing, driving people from online to in-store. Grew that to about 100 people, 8-digit revenues, and sold that to the Blackstone Group. And, more recently was doing computer vision in in-store retail and digital retail media. Was early on that train and sold that company. And as I was looking around for a new gig, I was talking to some VC friends and said, hey, you've got to check out this company called i-Genie, founded by these amazing Unilever guys who've got a big idea. And when I met Stan and Paul, I was like, oh, this is an incredible opportunity. So I joined about 9 months ago and really excited to be here. Stan?
Yeah, hi. I always begin my introduction by saying that I'm a one-trick pony. I've spent 40 years working, and the entire time I've spent in the insights industry. Before I co-founded i-Genie along with my co-founder Paul Van Gent, who was actually based in Durban, South Africa, I was with Unilever as EVP of Consumer and Market Insights based out of London. I was with them for 8 years. Before that, I was a Global Vice President of Marketing Strategy and Insights at the Coca-Cola company based out of Atlanta. I spent a total of 18 years with Coke, working all around the world, and then eventually finding my way to the North America business and then to head up the function globally. And before that, I was working in research agencies in India, in the Middle East, and so on. So that's basically my background. Yep.
And nobody knows more about kind of consumer insights technology than Stan. Just to give you a sense of scale, he's too humble to talk about this, but he managed a $350 million budget at Unilever. And one of the things he was known for is bringing new technologies in to really experiment with what new ways to approach data and technology could do to transform the insights function. And I think that's one of the reasons he has the Lifetime Achievement Award in Consumer Insights from TMRE and others. So, as I said, when I met Stan, just the opportunity to work with him was an incredible honor.
That's awesome. Thank you for adding it. We all need a cheerleader, Trevor.
I'm Stan's hype man.
There you go. Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So
and I've been yours, Casey. At times I've been your hype man too. Ricardo, I need to do more work for you.
No, Trevor,
appreciate
you literally, your phone calls have picked me up off the floor. You've been my own hype man. For decades now, the biggest brands in the world have been spending billions asking consumers what they want. And most of them were let's face it, it's just bullshit. Responding aspirationally versus their true actions, or at best, guessing. Brands being so detached from who their consumer is, not who they want their consumer to be, but who their consumer actually is. Did we ever really know our customers? Or have we just been comforting ourselves with the data that's aligned with what we think? And is it just because we didn't have the data? Or what is your kind of thoughts on it?
No, if you go back to this whole space of consumer understanding, that industry is actually 100 years old. Yeah. And it was started by Procter and Gamble on this side of the pond, and around the same time, Unilever started it on the other side of the pond. So every company worth its name is single-mindedly focused on understanding their consumer. If they don't understand, they know that they'll be toast. So they do invest a lot of money trying to understand the consumers. The question is, do they really get to the bottom of what the consumer actually wants? If I have to go back to my starting days in the research industry, those days you could get to the bottom of what consumers wanted, purely because you knew who you were talking to, you knew who you were getting opinions from, and that was very clear, and therefore you could get some decent information. But the world has changed. People are really time poor and info obese. Yeah. They have so much of information that they have that people don't have time for taking surveys. If I ask you, here is a 40-minute long questionnaire, I'll give you $5 for it. Are you going to jump on it?
$5.
Yeah, you're not doing it.
No one's doing that.
Yeah. So there is this thing. But of course, there are lots of people who still do it because $5 is $5. So a lot of people who do it. So the question is, how do you actually go around getting real consumer feedback? And there are various ways in which you can go at it. A few large companies I know of have major consumer immersion programs where they force their senior leaders to actually go and meet real people. They cannot meet thousands of people, but they do certainly go and meet real people. And that's the way you create human empathy. If you don't do that, what you're surely going to end up with is human sympathy. And that is exactly what consumers don't need. You don't need a company to look down upon them and say, oh, poor consumer, he's under pressure because of inflation. Let me solve their problem. No, you cannot solve their problem, right? You need to know what are they going to do? How can you help them as opposed to solve a problem for them? That's why human empathy is very important. And a lot of large companies that I know of, they all have programs to really make sure that they understand the humans at a very deep level. But at the same time, we are coming at it from a different angle. The way we are coming at it is saying, hey, people do not have time to talk to us, but they certainly talk about us.
Right.
Exactly.
They go and talk to in various forums where they spend a lot of time. Just open your iPhone and see how many hours you have spent on looking at that screen. It will be anywhere between 3 to 8 hours, depending on how addicted you are to that screen. But not all 8 hours you're doing through work, but you're also doing things like you're looking at your Insta post and you're looking at whatever you want to look at. You also engage with brands on your phone. So they do talk about us. So when they do talk about us, that is completely unsolicited. And that's when they're expressing their opinions freely. And the moment you can get those kind of inputs into a platform to analyze it using the current day technology in terms of AI and machine learning, then you can actually get some deep insights, which otherwise you would never get because people would never tell you what they actually think in response to a survey questionnaire. I always ask this question, are you in a committed relationship? And if you say, yes, I am, I always ask you, did you administer a 5-point scale questionnaire to your partner before you got into a deep relationship? The answer is invariably no. So if big life decisions are being taken based on listening to your heart, how can I listen to your heart? That is the challenge. And that's how we actually get down to doing what we do at i-Genie to really get to the bottom of the truth.
I can imagine that now we have consumers and then we have influencers that are talking about brands and have to account that those people are paid. And then also I bet there's a lot of bot users that might talk about lots of things that would never buy a product because there's got to be. So it definitely takes a lot more to dig through that today than it would have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even 10 years ago, I'd feel.
I think Trevor is the best person to talk about influencer. His wife is one.
Yes. No, absolutely. There's also a couple different ways that you actually want to look at this, right? One way is you want to get feedback from customers about your products, right? And what do they think about your products? But the second part is understanding how the market influences consumers during the journey. Do you actually you both want the authentic consumer feedback, and then you also want to understand the entire market, including the bots, including the influencers, and how that changes the perception as you go through. So when you go through your ratings and reviews, we know there's some bots in there, right? But those do influence people. And so depending on our product and which use case you're looking at, are you looking at what is brand equity in the market and how does that influence and predict sales even months out? You want to look at the holistically. But then the other piece about how some of the kind of bots and the other biases in the large scale data sets is really being multi-source. And I think one of the challenges in the industry is they're so single source, and each source has its own set of flaws, right? Whether it's social and influencers or review farms and things like that. One source that is really intact and is high fidelity, search, right? Nobody's gaming the searches that they do. And so one of the proprietary data sources we have, where a lot of people use Google Trends, which is highly derivative and very limited, right? We actually look at millions of keyword searches just in skincare. And then that represents millions of keywords, billions of keyword searches. And that has real authenticity. And so we can triangulate between social reviews and search together to have a good understanding of what's actually happening in the world. And that level of granularity that we get to, I think, is a real strength as well. We understand every ingredient. We know that vitamin C is the same as citric acid. So when you review this product over here, we know it has vitamin C in it. That affects our predictive algorithms as to what's trending, what will continue to trend. We look in, for example, trends, how search data flows into social data, because typically you see trends 6 months earlier on search, and you want to see that kind of translate into the social area. So there's a lot that we do with large scale data sets to be able to get to fidelity.
I just want to build on what Trevor said. This notion of influencers is not actually a new one. Good old days, Eve influenced Adam to take a bite of the apple. So the influencing was always happening, even from those days. And then people said, no, but now we have paid influencers. Again, I would say the influencers are always paid. Sometimes they were humans, sometimes they were not. In the good old days, it was television channels to whom you pay money to influence consumers, or you paid money to newspapers to put an ad to influence consumers. Now you pay money to a human being to say things that you want them to say about you. So influencers have always been there from the time humankind was there. So it is a question of the tone keeps changing. The way, form and shape in which they appear keeps changing. So therefore, we have to adapt in terms of how we actually go with the flow, go with the times, and then see how to influence people. And that's exactly what most marketers are doing. Any smart marketer knows that influencing is what their job is. Now, who they use, how they do it is going to change. It has to change with times.
Yeah, that's a great point. So you have all these different sources, whether it's influencers, search, and I guess the key is different ways of understanding each one. And we started out saying like, what happened to surveys? Because it feels like a lot of brands maybe were over-reliant on surveys to some extent as that mechanism to do this. Is the issue with those that they're being misused or maybe misinterpreted? Or is it that they just don't work to accomplish this kind of a goal in understanding that consumer sentiment?
No, I genuinely believe there is a role for surveys, and there are some things that you cannot do without a survey. Let's be clear about that. For example, if I've created a completely new product and I want to test the formulation of the product, I cannot do that through social listening or search or reviews, right? I need to make sure that it delivers what it is supposed to deliver. Therefore, I will send a product sample to somebody's house and I will do a survey among them. That's the only way I can get real feedback on whether they love the product or not. And there are a few other things where you would need surveys. The question that I have in my mind is not whether survey is needed or not, but whether the data that you get is actually valid or not. That to me is a much bigger issue, right? Now, if you find that a sizable proportion of people who took surveys on sanitary napkins were actually teen males and you did not even know about it, to me, that's a big problem. Yep. Yeah. And people can masquerade as whoever they want to be in an online survey. And if you do not have checks and balances, it is a problem. It is a problem. And by the way, that is not an uncommon thing. Recently, in the in ISOMAR Congress, ISOMAR is an apex body of all the insights professionals. The innovation award that they give went to a company that actually identifies what percentage of surveys taken are fraud. Yeah, it could be bot, it could be people masquerading as somebody who they are not, or it could be somebody just randomly filling out the survey. Yeah, in an ant in a farm somewhere in Philippines or in India. They came up with a number 40%, 40%. Right? Now, that is going to result in the industry actually moving mountains to actually make sure that the 40 comes to reasonable levels. And you said that there's a lot of people, there are bots who do reviews and so on and so forth. Yes, there is a data problem in everything. But the question is, do you have technology to be able to solve those problems or not? If you solve it, then you get nice, good information. There will always be some people who will lie. There will always be some data that will be filled out by the bots. But as long as it is minimized to the extent possible, then you can get to the real truth. And that's what, and here we know how to do this, whereas if the survey industry can crack it. And also, I have a conceptual problem with 5-point scale. We actually make it quite easy for people to give an answer. They'll say, read a statement, 5-point scale, 4. Next one, 3. Next one, 4. They go through the answers very quickly because they want to be out with it so that they can actually get the money that you don't want there. Whereas in a review, when you bought a cosmetic product and you applied it on your face and you felt great and you want to write a review, you write and you do that out of your own choice. And then you express it passionately. And that's why I believe that when people speak their mind out on their own, you get great answers. And
Right.
And I think that 40% fraud number is actually well accepted. I think Stan's got a million stories where he got feedback that Hellmann's mayonnaise was doing really well in India, to which he responded, interesting, we don't sell Hellmann's mayonnaise in India. That's the type of, that's what realistically happens with this.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that we haven't hit on is also the fact that surveys are limited. Even in that 5-point scale, you can ask about 5 to 10 competitors. Do you know how many brands there are in hair care? 1,900.
Yeah.
Over 1,900. And these days, there's so many disruptor brands that are, according to Ipsos, 70% of new market value is actually created by the disruptor brands. So you're not going to be able to look at these surveys, and you want them to be static over time so you can benchmark them. So you're looking at the same 5 to 10 competitors. Meanwhile, the real competitive threats are all the disruptors. And the other piece of that is being able to segment the market, right? So being able to look at segments and subsegments. We had one client who was looking at heat protectorant for hair, right? Which is a really small subsegment, but a big business, right? And they saw that, looking at every review for every SKU in the category, that people were complaining that you could only put heat protectorant in wet hair. And so we're going to create a product to put in dry hair. Immediate Amazon bestseller, immediate 4.8 stars average instead of 4.2, which is the category average. But you can't really look at a microscope of a subcategory in these broad-based surveys. And it's you're only certain audience that's going to take these things in the first place. Then you get all this fraud. Then you're limited in your view. So even when we look at some of the AI solutions that can help you build the surveys better and analyze the data better, and there's some getting it less expensive, which actually encourages worse audience sub-selection and greater bias. Like that whole process of AI-ifying surveys, we think ultimately is wrong. And so really looking at the biggest data set possible and using AI and natural language processing techniques allows us to see the macro market, to dig into the micro markets, and really provide actionable insights. Because the other thing is these things are changing so quickly. Surveys are so expensive. You can run them quarterly, maybe annually. We can get you near real-time data about what's happening. Think about tariffs in the US. How are tariffs or price change you're making affecting your brand's perception on premiumness and the value equation? We can show you that. If you're Kenvue and Tylenol and everything that's going on in the political aspect, don't you want to see how much that is being affected on a near real-time basis? These things, surveys just are not fast enough. They're too expensive. There's scope issues. So we really need to migrate to more digital signaling.
And I guess then that, to your point, that is where you really can't do this without what I'll call the more appropriate use of AI on top of all this data to get at that analysis, right? This is something we couldn't do before.
Yep. That's the key. That's a key thing because the volume of data is so huge, humanly impossible for anyone to process all that data. Thank God for AI. Then it actually helps to take away a bulk of the grunt work. And then you can apply your intelligence. If we expect AI to spit out all the answers, I always say that over-reliance on artificial intelligence will result in exponential growth in natural stupidity.
I
I'll have to remember that one. I may steal that one.
So you have to be careful. You have to be careful. The most important thing is use AI to actually harness the power of all the data that you have access to, overlay your own knowledge of the business, knowledge of the competitive landscape, and come up with a strategy that will make your business viable. And that's what we call as augmented intelligence. So it is AI, artificial intelligence plus human intelligence is equal to augmented intelligence. And that's what we try and enable our clients to do.
Yeah, I think there's this, we always hear, know your customer, know your customer. And there's a lot of brands that have failed at really knowing their customer. But the real blind spot might not just be knowing your customer, but actually knowing your product. A lot of what you guys are talking about really comes down to product knowledge and understanding of how it lives in people's hands, homes, habits. How do great merchants and brands close the gap between what they designed and what people are experiencing?
Yeah, this is a part of like really understanding the language that people use around products, right? And one of the things that I think is different about us is that we literally get reviews for every SKU in the category. And so to that heat protectorant example, like to be able to segment into that and then to see the topics that lead to either positive or negative reviews, positive or negative sentiment, and to be able to cluster those things with natural language processing, just helpful kind of what deterministically leads to positive reviews, negative reviews, but also we wrap it all with an LLM and an agent that we call Presto. So you can literally start asking it questions like, what type of events do people talk about when they use this product? What type of contexts are in the verbatims of the reviews or the social posts? How can I segment into that and be able to ask those types of questions in a free form kind of way and to have a really potent way of organizing all that data? Like I talked a little bit about the ingredients in vitamin C and citric acid. We basically read the entire category. We understand every claim, every benefit, every ingredient, every format, right? So how do people talk about serums versus cleansers versus toners, et cetera, et cetera? We can segment all that data. And so one of the key things around AI is this master data management of how we organize the information. So you can ask those very types of questions in very specific contexts and have that level of understanding. And I think that's missing with a lot of solutions out there. For example, with trending, a lot of people use social listening for trending, and they give it, here are the sets of things, the trends we want to listen to. Then you're not, if you already know what the trends are, you're just measuring it. You won't see the early things that are
really
up and coming.
Right? Like when you're asking questions, it's like they surveys always ask me things. They're like, which one of these other? I'm like, I don't buy any of them.
Yeah.
I buy something over here. Like just because this is in my on one of my shelves, you're the anomaly, not the rest. The rest is more like the emerging brands, maybe luxury, maybe this, maybe that. Somebody gifted it to me. I got it for a birthday. But like the anomaly is usually the person asking for the survey. I found.
And look, this made sense though, right? This made sense when there was Coke and Pepsi and maybe 3 soft drinks. We work with Coca-Cola. We track over 130 beverages, right? The disruption in the market and the fragmentation is incredible. Yeah. And just fundamentally, the market has changed. Yeah. And we need a different way of looking at things.
Yeah. Different seasons.
That is probably another. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, that's what I was saying. It's not like one product also for an entire year, especially when you come into like hair care.
Right.
We know that we need to switch it up. So we switch it up between a couple brands. Different seasons, we buy different products in the winter than we do in the summer and things of that nature, right?
I think, one of the big macro trend in most CPG categories is almost vanishing of barriers to entry. Yeah, anybody with a small garage can actually make a product now. Yeah, or you can go to a toll packer and get it made. And that's the reason why Trevor talked about 1,900 hair care brands. And this is not just restricted to a country like the US. I just heard last week that in Indonesia, there are 8,000 personal care brands. That's staggering.
Yeah.
That's absolutely staggering.
Yeah.
You don't know who's biting your ankles.
Yeah.
Your legs are into the water and you're looking at all the usual suspects and you're competing with them, but there are 1,000 ankle biters that are getting launched. If you can't figure out who's going to crawl their way up and actually swallow you early enough, you could be completely blindsided. And that's the reason why some of the traditional survey-based tools where you have restrictions on number of brands that you can track becomes very challenging. But then some of the survey-based tools also pivot and say, oh, but then we have synthetic respondents. Yeah. And we can administer the same questionnaire to synthetic respondents, give you data in less than 5 minutes time. Sounds very promising. Yeah, sounds very promising. Now, would I buy that logic, lock, stock, and barrel? Probably no. Why? Because I would say that I would surely talk to synthetic respondents the day they have credit cards and they can buy things from the shelf. Yeah. So that's my simple pushback. But then, jokes apart, how did you create the synthetic respondents? You created the synthetic respondent based on past respondents whom you have surveyed. We talked about 40% fraud in the survey, so you're perpetuating that going forward. So that's number one. Number two is whoever told you that the way people behaved in the past are exactly the way people are going to behave in the future, right?
Right.
So when you do those kind of things, you will get the kind of results that you have always had. So, companies, CPG companies, you talk to any large companies, they would say, yeah, growth is a challenge. But if you do more of the synthetic respondent, your growth will be a challenge. That is one thing you can predict with 100% accuracy. Because you want something that is actually big and bold. And I always ask people, when was the last time you noticed a big breakthrough innovation in the world of CPG? Ask you that question. Most people will say, and they start thinking, and they would not come up with an answer. So sometimes people come back and say this product and that product, and invariably those things are launched 15 and 20 years ago. Right now, if there is a disease that plagues the entire CPG industry, it is, I would say, two major ones: fragrance-itis and flavor-itis. So it's easy. Change the fragrance, change the flavor. And then some formatitis. That is the other third disease.
Just creating variations on a theme.
Yeah, they're all variation. To me, they're renovations, not innovations. No wonder 95% of all innovations fail in the market.
Yeah.
Because
that's a crazy stat.
That's crazy.
It's a crazy stat. And I think it's because of the human bias in surveys and panels. We actually have a product that's super cool called Innovate, which takes every combination of ingredient, format, claim, benefit, and creates hundreds of thousands of product ideas and then scores them with our predictive analytics, basically looking at those trends on citric acid or other things. And we did this with a major cleaning product company, large multinational, billion-dollar company plus. And obviously they have a robust innovation team and practice. And they tested 20 of their internal ideas that they were in the vetting process with against our 10 top ideas with consumers. 9 of the 10 top ideas came from us, and because it's all data driven. And there's this great marketunist who I love. It's a cartoonist. You should check him out, Marketunist. He's got this great cartoonist. I'm glad we got these survey results on our new product innovation ideas. We're just going to go with what our boss's 14-year-old daughter says she likes.
Yeah.
Right. And I actually, interestingly, watched a Robin Williams documentary on the flight home yesterday. And the reason that Mork got created for Mork and Mindy, he started on the Happy Days. It was because the director's son just had seen Star Wars and said, I don't want to watch Happy Days. I need something with a spaceman in it. And so that's how they introduced spaceman. And that's what's happening with innovation. And then you get these 90% failure rates, and it takes 18 months to 3 years to come to market. So they're even basing this stuff on trends they identified 3 years ago and have passed by. And we can compress those innovation cycles from 18 months to 36 months to 2 to 3 months, right? And so it's all about faster data, better data that's attributable, right? And like synthetics, if it's garbage in, it's garbage out. You're just getting garbage faster. And this is where AI is dangerous, right? You really need to make sure that you're rooted in very
Yeah.
robust data sets and predictive algorithms that actually do predict success.
And I think like I got to see a bit of a demo. I got to play with some keywords. I got to see what it looks like, how I could ask questions. And I think I was just so impressed by one, a merchant and a product junkie is going to ask different types of questions in a different context than an analyst, right? Like I want to dig in and ask really specific questions. And because I'm a user, I'm a consumer, I'm a product junkie. I know all these other products that I might also buy. And I've been researching ingredients or this or that or skincare issues or hair issues. Oh my goodness, everybody is on Nutrafol for like hair loss. What's going on? This was like not a thing. But just to be able to sit there and dig into the data and the way that you guys have it set up, it's so much more intriguing than I would have expected. And that's where I'm like, okay, let me see this because I need to understand, like, how do I engage? Can I ask anything? Can I really dig in? And you can. And it has context and you can shoot for extra context. And I just found it very intriguing. Like, I was like, all right, I want to come play with Sandbox.
Yeah. And like one of the things you can do with it is you can say, I'm in the innovation department, and then it'll give you answers tailored to your process, right?
Yeah.
So you can create personas and things like that. But you can also like just dig high level down to the root. And one of our goals, and this is something that Stan brings from the Unilever days, and as honestly as a tech CEO, like I struggle with a little bit, is just, we really want to democratize access to this data everywhere, right? For example, we have unlimited seats. If you buy a license to your data and your application, deploy it to as many seats in the organization at the same price. And right, not everybody wants to go to a dashboard, right? Stan says it's dashboards dash hopes. and you need to be able to create these lighter weight, less frictiony experiences for an executive. Executives are not going to go into a dashboard and try and figure out how to navigate different levels of data and filters and other things. And so they'll ask an analyst who then has a 2 to 3 week project to get them the data. Now you can just ask it in Presto and get an answer right there at the right level for your question, whether you're an executive, somebody on the marketing team looking at campaign and how it affects my notion of premiumness and value or pricing, tariffs, like all of that, you can just ask questions very quickly. And I think that's going to be transformative too. Just what we're seeing from how client usage is spiking because they just have better ways to interact with the data.
With all the access. Yeah. It makes me think us this way. So if you're knowing you have access to all the data in this way and you have the right level of AI that can give you the intelligence and the insights you need to make these kinds of decisions, if you're re-architecting a CPG organization around this kind of data access, right? How are you changing the way things are done, like from the product innovation, development, all the way through to the marketing and to the distribution, compared to the old ways of doing it now that you have this access?
That's a great question. The short answer to that is these things, the kind of stuff that we do, they will replace some of the things that you've been used to in the past. And it's not a restructuring of a company, but it is reorientation of a mindset that is required because you are used to a particular way of doing this, and it is part of your performance incentive system and so on and so forth. Therefore, you don't want to give that up. Yeah. To me, it's a mindset issue much more than what the data can do. And therefore, do we need a restructuring of the company? Probably no. I think most companies have evolved in terms of structure to cope with the digital world that they have walked into. So I think the structure is pretty much there. And I genuinely believe that there is no perfect structure. Every company structures and restructures every 3 years in pursuit of a perfect solution, but it doesn't exist. It's what you do that matters much more than what structure you're following under. So that's point number one. Point number two is the question that companies need to ask themselves is, are they geared for rapid actions? That is the thing that holds back most companies. Having worked in large companies, sometimes it could take a month to get the stakeholders together in a room to talk about the issue, right? Purely because people are traveling, they have busy schedules, they have all kinds of things. But then the agility is lost because of the fact that you're large and you have a bit of bureaucracy to contend with. But are you ready for that? What changes do you need to make in your workflow to make a way for agile techniques to really have an impact? So that's a second thing that I would surely say that is a change management that one need to go through. The third thing is, from a philosophical point of view, if you are not willing to give up the past, you can never walk into the future. Yeah. And I can keep saying that, oh, in good old days, 40 years ago, we used to go door to door and do paper and pencil interviews. It was so much more reliable. You can argue it was reliable, not reliable, but then don't give up that. Then I will be in problem. I'll have a big problem, right?
Yeah.
You have to learn to undo things and redo things and rewire yourself to be able to do that. That's, to me, everything is all about the mindset shift that one has to go through.
Yeah, and I think it's a very interesting time because we all see the articles on AI and how people are adopting it. We talk to people who say, AI is moving so quickly, and at the same time, because it's moving so quickly, we're behind, but we're also afraid to make a decision because we're afraid the decision we make is going to be obsolete by the time we implement it, or that kind of paralysis. But you can't both say we're behind and agree on paralysis. And that struggle is real. And I think one thing that Stan was known for at Unilever was being able to make sure to be able to do a lot of tests, try a lot of new techniques, knowing that some of them are going to fail, knowing that you're going to test things that don't make sense, but learning from them, and then finding that the successes as a portfolio outweigh all the failures. And for conservative organizations, that's really difficult. But I think it's the only way in a fast-moving market that you can be successful. We talk to some people who are like, oh, you have social data. We already have social listening, so we don't need that. I was like, no, don't think of them as data sources. Think about use cases and applications and all the predictive algorithms that you put on top of it. You can't get siloed in these ways and say what you're using for kind of monitoring customer engagement online is the same as what you should be thinking about brand equity and trend spotting. So I think that's a real struggle for people and one I empathize with. But the alternative is that the organization will find a way. And so one of the things we're seeing is consumer insights budgets are under a lot of scrutiny, and the departments that are depending on them, like marketing, are finding their own data sources to work around it. And that's a shame because I think consumer insights has a real role to play in the information economy where differentiation is based upon the quality and speed of information that you need. And I think having a centralized consumer insights function that can support it with rich data science, multi-data source attribution, that's going to be absolutely critical to success. So it's an exciting time. It's a very exciting time.
Yeah, it's always difficult when you get pigeonholed into something that already exists. You're like, no, we're not that. Nope, we're not that either. Nope, not that either. It can be a fraction of all of these, all of them, or none of. You sit in these rooms with the retail CEOs, C-suite teams, the ones who might smile for the earnings call and panic behind closed doors. When the cameras aren't rolling, how do they really talk about AI? We've spoken a lot on, and it's in every single conversation right now. What are you hearing? Is it excitement or is it terror?
I don't know what the retail CEO, but I can tell you what CPG CEO.
Yeah, let's talk about CPG.
CPG, I think there is excitement and a bit of nervousness. So excitement because they know that, listen, this is here to stay. Yeah. This is like what word processor was however many years ago, 30 years ago, 35 years ago. It is here to stay. It's not going to go away.
Right.
It is going to fundamentally change the way we work. The nervousness comes from the fact that, can I move faster than the company?
Yeah.
Because that is something that people are worried about, honestly. Because you go to any conference today, you show me one conference where the word AI is not uttered, and I'll give you $100 for each of them.
It's a safe bet.
Even take out like bet.
So it is bizarre how everybody's talking about it. Everybody's talking about it. The nervousness comes from the fact that, listen, do I have the right kind of people? Do I know what to do? How to tame this beast and make it do what I want to get done? Those are the concerns that they have. But there is no doubt in their mind that this is going to be something that will fundamentally change the way the business is going to be done.
You guys have got billions of unfiltered signals at your fingertips. Posts, videos, reviews, Reddit threads. That's basically the raw subconscious of humanity at this point. Does that ever freak you out a little bit?
It does freak you out. It does freak you out. Actually, believe it or not, just 2 days ago, head of data science, she sent a small award that we got from OpenAI, saying that we are one of the few companies who have crossed 10 billion token usage. Yeah, 10 billion token usage. And bear in mind that we are not a large multinational company. We are multinational, but we are not large.
Yeah.
For a company like a startup like us to get that award, it really felt good. B, to your point, I really got a bit worried. We probably have more information about humanity than what we can actually cope with. Yeah. And if we are using 10 billion tokens to analyze that, imagine if we actually have an army of people and we go up to, let's say, 50 billion tokens and start asking some existential questions of the data that we have, we could be a massive powerhouse. Are we there? No. Should we get there? Yes. How do we get there? Is what the journey that we are on. But yes, we do have a lot of information. I'll give you a simple example. Let's say you're a manufacturer of adult diapers. Yeah. Now, can you imagine yourself sending a survey out to, let's say, 60-plus-year-old human beings and say, I'm doing a survey on adult diapers. Let me ask you a few screener questions. Do you use them? Yeah. How many people will openly admit to the fact, even if it is an online survey, how many people will openly admit to the fact that I use an adult diaper?
Right.
Really? Yeah. And then after that, you're going to ask them a whole lot of questions. Why and why not and so on and so forth. But then you go to an e-commerce website like Amazon and you'll find people reviewing brands like Depend and other competitors.
Right.
Imagine, do you want to spend your entire life looking for a needle in a haystack? Or do you want to go and look where all the needles are concentrated and analyze the needles to see what is the insight? I think the power of data that we have is unbelievable. But at the same time, it is also a bit, what I would say, overwhelming at times. More than you need to know. But believe me, we don't ever get into personal identifiable information. We can trace it back to individuals because that is not the game in which we are in. Privacy and compliance is one of the most important things, but both from a respondent point of view and from our client point of view, we make sure that whatever we do for our client remains private to the client and not generally accessible to the whole world. So it is actually an evolving space. There is not a single day that passes without us sitting there and saying, oh shit, this can be done. Oh, when do we do it? How do we do it? And the possibilities are immense.
I think that that's really interesting. I always say, let brands focus on product, right? If you're a product leader or retailer trying to innovate, how do you tap into the sentiment in a way that's actionable, not just necessarily poetic? Are there certain signals that tell you a product is loved, not just bought?
Yeah, you mentioned, and this is like a good retailer tie-in, is just if you think about your assortment in the skincare space, right? And you're looking at trends. We just posted an article about how pistachio is going to be one of the next great skincare trends 18 months from now. And you could look at your assortment and say, hey, do I ever need pistachio? And does the assortment that I'm picking actually lead to positive or negative sentiment? And if you're Kroger, for example, in your grocery store, you don't actually have a lot of reviews compared to Amazon, Walmart. You probably want that data. You want the social data. You want to know that SKU that is on your shelf, people actually don't like. They buy it and then they get disappointed and they think to themselves, you know what? Maybe I should be going to Ulta. Maybe I should be going to Sephora because the assortment is not actually pleasing, right? So you want to be able to have real data signals and also predictive data signals, because we know it takes 6 months from the time that you say there's a problem, I've got to change the assortment, to actually doing the changes. So you need to get ahead of things. And we can look at sentiment based on what your reviews, what stars you have, what words you use, sentiment analysis. There's just so many different ways to slice and dice it these days, and be able to triangulate that kind of from a multi-source perspective is critical. And I think one of the challenges for retailers is they think about, I've got my data and my data is my proprietary thing, that they don't actually triangulate against the greater market data and multi-source data sets.
I'll give you a simple use case, which I think will be incredibly powerful for retailers. So what are the 3 top pain points for a retailer? Pain point number 1 is, how do I drive more footfall into my physical outlet? Yeah, that's pain point number 1. Pain point number 2 is, I have finite shelf capacity. If something comes in, something has to go. Otherwise, I cannot start. That's a pain point number 2. The third big pain point is, I have finite capacity among buyers, time capacity. Yeah, they can only meet so many number of people, and therefore I can only see. Now, in the light of all the 3 pain points, here is the solution. What if I can actually go and tell a retailer that these are the 5 brands / SKUs you need to have in your outlet. If you have them, it will drive people into your outlet. And after that, you are a master in making people buy more things once they're inside the outlet. But these 5 will be the crowd puller that will bring people in. That's number 1. Now, that automatically tells you that you don't have to meet every Tom, Dick, and Harry who walk through the door saying, I have a new mousetrap. The buyer now then focuses on outbound reach as opposed to inbound conversation. Inbound are dime a dozen. But if you have to consciously go after these 5 brands, pick up the phone, talk to them and say, hey, come over, talk to us. We would like to talk to you about how we can partner together in storing. So that takes care of the buyer's time constraint problem. It takes care of your shelf size problem. And it also takes care of your footfall problem. Now, how do we know that? To Trevor's point earlier on, we analyze the total market, whether it is Ulta, Sephora, Amazon, or CVS, or whatever it is, we analyze everyone. And then from there, we can identify which are the brands that have ankle biters, which are showing a phenomenal accelerated growth momentum. If you have it now, you're going to be winning tomorrow.
Yeah. I think it's interesting even for just acquisition strategy also.
Yeah.
We are doing this for clients.
Yeah.
Which brand they should be acquiring.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Talking about a contract that we got today morning, that was exactly for the same thing. Believe it or not, you couldn't have said it at a more efficient time.
That's right. And we have this brand equity analysis that basically reflects market share and predicts market share. And this other product, which we are relaunching called ACQ, that lets you really understand the trajectories of brands and whether their growth is going to be lasting. And those predictive insights are going to be valuable to a lot of people. We don't currently sell to hedge funds and PE. Obviously, this is really valuable data for the conglomerates to understand, build a portfolio. Now, don't wait for the brands to get so big that you have to spend $500 million, $1 billion, but actually place a lot of different bets in more of a portfolio strategy and say, we'll acquire these 20 brands that have this trajectory that we believe will lead to the types of success. And so that's transformative to have that data from an M&A perspective.
Yeah. So I guess that leads me maybe the one final question to close this out here. If we look ahead 3 years from now, we think maybe every brand has access to this kind of real-time human sentiment and this analysis capability. Does that mean that every brand finally understands people better, understands their customer? And maybe does that enable every brand to be a disruptor?
You could have asked this question 20 years ago. You all had insights budgets. Would you all be having the same level of understanding of consumer? The answer is no then, and the answer is no today also.
Yeah, every day, right? I could love you for the whole month, and then one day I'm just you're dead to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always say access to information is the what, but the real joy in the so what and the now what.
Yeah.
Which is the other secret sauce that we bring to the table as a company, because while we have technology, we have agentic systems and dashboards and so on and so forth. To me, those are all means to an end. But a lot of the team members are people who have worked in large client-side businesses. Therefore, they understand what keeps people awake at night. And therefore, their ability to move from the what to the so what to the now what is something that our clients usually appreciate, because it's not an artifact that we produce and give it to them and say, keep admiring it. No, we actually go to them with recommendations on what they could potentially do. And those recommendations are not fluffy recommendations. Those are usually grounded in realities of doing business. But at the same time, there's an element of push and stretch. that makes the client sit there and take notice and say, oh, this is interesting. I would like to do it. So that's how we structured our company. There is a bunch of technical folk who are the majority of the people, but then the other people whom we call the client success people, they work hand in glove with the client, our clients, to land these insights at scale. And that's when you think you'll create a competitive edge. And if more clients do that, then you'll see a transformative outcomes in the area of marketing.
Yeah. And I would also add that you need to fight the battles that you're uniquely suited to win, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a large conglomerate, there may be trends that you don't want to hop onto because they're big enough for other people, but not big enough to actually have a meaningful impact in your business. Or you're not the type of marketing organization to make a new market, but you're really great at taking an existing trend and then marrying it to mass market, right?
Yeah.
And like part of the challenge is how do you provide the right level of data, the right level of filters so that you can figure out the types of challenges and type of market opportunities that are right for you as a business. And if you think about what that means in terms of how you filter the data, how you understand the data and the sub-markets, that level of granularity is also very difficult. And so that's a big part of what we focus about data and master data management, understanding every ingredient, understanding every claim and benefit. Like it's so that you can be able to segment that about the markets that matter, about how to look at your current portfolio and where you're positioned and the trends that relate to, let's say, kind of natural ingredients or wherever your positioning is. What are the natural ingredient opportunities that are adjacent to you? And really being able to personalize that is critical. So it's not just that you have access to the same data, it's access to the data that is then personalized directly to your opportunities as a market maker.
Yeah.
Stan, Trevor, it's been so much fun having you on the show. And I love this topic. I didn't think I would. I was like, surveys. But that's the whole point, right?
Right.
But you played with Presto and you started asking questions and you're like, wow, how do you know that?
I'm like, I want a username and password. Like now, I want to play with this. And I was very impressed and I was very intrigued, and it communicated in the way that like I wanted to engage. And I think it's really compelling. And I just hope that everybody can just get to know their customers, understand their product, and just make better products, the best products we should have. It's coming into 2026. Every brand should be the best version of themselves. So thank you so much for sharing today. I'm just loving this episode. Before we go, if there's anyone in our audience that wants to reach out to you and learn more about what you talked about today, potentially connect, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, obviously go to our website, i-Genie.ai. I'm Trevor Sumner on LinkedIn, and then Sthanunathan is also on LinkedIn. We're pretty active there. So yeah, those are probably the best ways to come reach out to us.
Yeah. Our email address is also very simple. Trevor's is Trevor at i-Genie.ai, and mine is Stan at i-Genie.ai.
Perfect. That's easy. That makes it easy.
We'll be more than happy to.
This episode is a wrap, gentlemen.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
If you enjoyed our show, please consider giving us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Good Pods. Remember to smash that subscribe button in your favorite podcast player, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a minute. I'm Casey Golden.
Please follow us on social and share your feedback at Retail Razor on LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Threads, and Instagram. Subscribe to our Substack newsletter to preview the best highlights from each episode and get bonus content right in your email inbox. Visit our website at retailrazor.com for transcripts and more info about each episode and our amazing guests. The Retail Razor Show is the original show in the Retail Razor Podcast Network. I'm Ricardo Belmar.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time, stay sharp, stay human, and stay ahead. This is the Retail Razor Show.